Hi, John. It's nice to see you on the screen.
It's nice to see you too.
What is it like to sit here and being interviewed for your next SAS in Bali?
It's quite exciting.
Mm-hmm. It was lovely to host you for the three past Bali immersions. Um, how was that for you to came to Bali in the past to host training here?
Yeah, it's very close to my heart actually, especially the trip this year in January. It was yeah, very special. Both both the immersions were incredibly deep and rich and powerful and surrendered, and I loved the people that came. I loved working with you. I loved the venue. I loved the surroundings and being in the Bali culture. Yeah, I liked what came through me, my leadership. And feel really good there.
I really appreciated the deep experiences I had. Yeah, and to be part of your team. And I really look forward to you coming back to having a longer journey with us. And you're often mentioning the being together is a bit like a hero's journey. Would you like to speak more about that?
Yeah, there's something about the structure of the SAS that um, seems to allow for people to go on a serious hero's journey themselves. Um, it's a challenging structure in many ways. It typically takes people to their edges at certain parts over the 6 months. But it's also very supported and guided. It kind of has both sides. Like we're not purposely trying to take people to their limits, but when we fully embrace the practice, we enter unknown spaces and we enter that uncharted territory. And it's amazing what can be brought forth in those highly creative open spaces. And it's partly like the unknown of like how confronting it could be or how ecstatically beautiful it could be. There's something about being in that unknown and the tension of that that's very energizing and not sure the word, but like generates a lot of life force and excitement and possibility. And then at the same time of all that kind of creative possibility, there's you get to learn circling and you get to learn what it is to lead, the simplicity of a birthday circle and like the structure of that, and how beautiful a practice that is to be able to share and do well, and how that's also kind of transformative for yourself, because each time you lead a birthday circle or lead circling, you get this amazing feedback and you're transforming when you lead as well. So it's this mix of leading and receiving and growing and connecting and surrendering that, yeah, makes it really magical.
Yeah, it seems that the quality of presence supporting people to dive into their deep vulnerability. And would you like to speak something about how you see the essence of birthday circle? and how that would supporting someone to see themselves in a deep level may not to be seen often.
Yeah, the beauty of it for me is that it's the circling is being with someone where they are. So it's like we don't know where it's going to go. It could take them into a really vulnerable place, or it could take them into their most powerful place. My I'm losing I'm losing my voice. I'm checking if I'm still connected with you. How are you doing?
Feeling a little bit like amused at this moment in a good way. And I kind of feeling your vulnerability as presenting yourself in front of camera.
There's a lot of joy in presenting myself this way too.
And in this moment, the question came up, but is like, what is allow yourself really be seen, and how SAS supports that to a deeper level. And that there was a lot of magic has happened in the 3-day immersion, and I imagine in a longer container as we get to know each other and support each other to go deeper. And that's part of that. I'm looking forward to this deeper experience.
Yeah, I enjoy the consistency of the 6 months. It's not just a weekend high. Like there's weekend highs, and then how now what? Like, what's our life like after this? What do we want to change in our life? What matters to us deeply in our life now? How can we support each other with that over the 6 months? And how can we get better and better at this skill of circling someone else, which feels like one of the purest gifts you can share with someone.
Yeah, from kind of like a personal interaction as co-lead together sometimes, and as well as how you show up in a circle. And I really appreciate it how you're supporting people to really show up in that power. And would you like to speak a little bit more about the surrender leadership in a unique way, how Circling Europe style in your way of leading this movement? Yeah, if you want to tell the people might be interested more about it.
Sure. Well, surrendered leadership is a paradox, and when I when I think of your question about the power thing, I get this paradox comes up as well of like, yeah, I'm good at supporting people into their power. Yeah, I do that. I'm good at that. Yet circling isn't, and surrendered leadership isn't about that. It's about presence and connection and listening for aliveness. And so in a way, we're not trying to get anywhere. We're just opening more deeply to what is. And ironically, that is really powerful. People access deeper, more powerful, more essence-like parts of themselves. But it's such an organic process that that's what makes surrendered leadership so special. Is it's not that we throw planning out of the window. We plan and we have intentions, but the magic seems to happen when we enter the unknown space and trust deeply. in something beyond us. And it's amazing how it feels we're blessed, or grace emerges, and through that process everyone has their own hero's journey that is everything that the best heroes' journeys can be. It's has the most richest parts of life and fullness of life included in it.
Would you like to give us example of the moments, like the process really support yourself as your own hero's journey? Just a little story around it.
You mean my own personal?
Yes.
I'm not sure where to start. I nearly spoke about it earlier. I remember my second circle. This was like 8 or 9 years ago. I was talking about like feeling I had some kind of gift, but didn't really know what it was. And some guy just challenged me and came out and said, "What have you got to offer the world? Like, come on, say it right now in front of these 16 people." And that was like the worst thing that someone could have said. Like, put me on the spot like that. It was like, oh. So I like had all this fear come up. And then I was looking at him and I started to feel love. It just kind of emerged between us. And I was like, oh, love is something I have to offer. And then I was looking at him again, and then like the whole room went quiet, and I started to drop into some kind of transpersonal state or deep presence. And then I said, oh, I have some spiritual wisdom to share, or something like that. And it was like the gifts just came out of nowhere, that I had no control over it. And that was a big opening for me of this idea of surrender to something greater, and surrender as a form of power and integrity and highest expression of life. And I got mirrored back. Like, people said, oh, you could be a leader of this. You could lead circling. And at the time I was like, huh? I hadn't really thought of that. And it took a few years, but then that's what I ended up doing. And I've done that for the last 6 years. And it's this amazing process of like emergent things showing up and being witnessed and being held, but also being challenged, like having people's truth skillfully brought towards you. So generative.
It's an amazing story. Hmm. And often people come to the circle and say, this is amazing shadow work. Would you like
Mm-hmm.
to say something about that?
Yeah. Yeah. It is. It is amazing shadow work, and it might redefine how you perceive shadow work, because it's, yeah, it feels, I can only describe it with theory. I'm not sure if it's really shadow work. yeah, my smart answer is it's better. It's amazing shadow work, and it will has the potential to wake you up out of wanting to do shadow work. Or it's a transcendent include of shadow work. Like it's more about awakening to the wholeness and the fullness that you are. And shadow work can be a beautiful part of that, but there's more a sense of self that can come online that's more awake than that and more in touch with your own pulse of life force, essentially. And that shadow becomes your unlived life, or it's all the ways you haven't lived fully, and you can start to.
Is there examples that you've seen in the circles in the past you'd like to share around that?
More speaking from myself again, like there was such an ingrained, I need to get from A to B, I need to achieve this thing, and that gradually it was like it just started to dawn on me that if I just let go, like a more natural, essential part of me will live and go for what it wants and get what it wants. Essentially, it's like a rather than a more mind-oriented approach. I was able to lean back somehow and realize the a deeper reality that was actually at work, that was less about John being a separate individual who is trying to get from A to B, and more John is part of this interconnected web of people in life, and how much can I listen and allow John to be John fully and trust in this space that's interconnected with others. And I actually have memories of like being in a nightclub in the UK like 8 years ago when some guy was telling me to approach this woman, and I did find the woman attractive, and he was like, get over there, go in there. And something in me was like, don't, no, doesn't feel right to me. And I think I did go over there. And as soon as I went over there, her friend came up to me and said, no, leave her alone. And there was something that dawned on me, like that was like the straw that broke the camel's back of like, oh, trust yourself. What you're feeling is already interconnected with what's out there. Like, trust yourself. And sure, you need to be ready to update, and maybe what you're sensing is off, and you need to be totally open to let go of what you're feeling. But it was just a reminder of just trust what's in me. Like, you don't have to make something happen in that way. And then I say that, and the paradox you could say is, and there's an essential way to make something happen. Sometimes that is your highest expression, to make something happen. But something really dropped in me then of, oh, just you can trust yourself at the deepest level, and that way you can forge your own path in life, which is less about you and less controlled by you. But paradoxically, it feels more like you. You become more yourself.
Yeah, like what I love about circling the most, it is like a great practice to fine tune that sensitivity to follow energy at the present moment, like a dance, and just see how the energy goes. And the circle really provide a lot of those opportunities to practice on that. And another thing I have benefited amazingly through this practice is what it's like to drop into my vulnerability. Um, yeah, and like I do appreciate the level of vulnerability I've seen you in this work.
Mm.
And for me, vulnerability felt like a big subject. And yeah, would you like, if you have any insights around that you'd like to share?
Yeah, it's, I think that was a big part of the realization that me and Sean had when we just kept practicing circling each other. Like again, 8 or 9 years ago, we just loved the practice and we did it so much. And we kept seeing like, oh, when we show the part of ourselves that we're most scared to show, we're most loved. Or like, not that it happens every time, you never know what's going to happen when you do anything, but like there's seen this incredibly strong pattern, and we see it in every time I lead, I see it. It's like, oh, I've always believed that I can't show that part of me because it's shameful, or it's not respectful of the other, or whatever it can be. Like these survival strategies or these patterns that we've developed in our life that are now out of date somewhat. And it's the huge thing we see is over and over again when people actually show what's there in the moment and really tell the truth and reveal it. It's magnetic and it's inspiring and it's loving, and so we started to like join the dots of like, oh, if we're vulnerable and we show up in it and we stay open to other people, cool stuff seems to happen. And stuff seems to happen that we couldn't have planned beforehand. And that, you could say, is a simple idea of surrendered leadership. Like we are there to share a practice, and we're in the practice ourselves. So we're showing up every minute, and we're willing to connect at every minute. We're not going to hide behind a leadership facade. And from doing all the practice, it was like, felt like a rock climber that could go higher and higher with less and less ropes, because we trusted the process, because we had done it so many times that then it became very natural to be very vulnerable in front of a room and to not know what to say and to share that. And because we were trusting this other process that was at work. And it's become ingrained and just normalized to be vulnerable in that way and to trust that. And I think that that's a place maybe where we lead for other people who haven't explored that level of vulnerability yet in their life. And I saw a clip from Breanne Brown this morning, who's obviously a huge proponent of vulnerability, and she was saying, there's a pseudo vulnerability where it's not actually that scary and like you're not actually on your edge, but that's what real authenticity and real vulnerability is like, you don't know where this is going to go, and you don't know that you're necessarily not going to get shamed from people. And it's entering that space together in a group that is what we do in the SAS. And we have 6 months to like really go into those places with each other.
It feels quite exciting to hear that.
It's nice to share. It's nice to share.
Well, what was the scariest moment you've ever experienced in the SAS training?
Hey, Kayla. You come to save me from answering a really hard question from your mum. The scariest moment was, I think there was one time during there was one time during a certification. We do certifications on the last weekend, which are beautiful. They're a deep chance to meet. They're like, we go very deep into a connection. Kayla, I'm trying to tell people about the SAS here. This is very important. Oh,
You got a bigger challenge, how to be with the flow.
yeah. It reminds me of innocence as being such a central theme as well to what we do.
And that the question right now is like chaos.
Yeah, there's certainly chaotic moments in the SAS, and yeah, I was ready to scrap the whole certification system during it one time because someone wasn't happy in some way, and I remember really like, let's just scrap the whole thing then. And this was mid-course, mid-certifying, and it was pretty chaotic, and it can be disturbing for people, the level of chaos that we're willing to embrace. And I don't apologize for that. I look at it from 2 points of view. One is, I believe in the full embrace of the polarity of order and chaos. And a lot of our understanding is about polarities, and we want the polarities to have their full range. And that's where the most energy is created. And can we expand our capacities so that we can embody polarities fully and be even bigger than polarities, which then seems to link to a sense of divinity or transpersonal. So we do embrace the full polarity of order and chaos. And on the other side, it's great to go out of your comfort zone, but not to go out of your window of tolerance, essentially. So I and the other leaders have a very close eye on people, going beyond that stretch that's then, potentially traumatizing or just no longer healthy. So there's not we're not trying to stir people up or create chaos, but we are open to the natural chaos that lives between us. And we're also open to the order that can be brought and the clarity that can be very liberating.
I have really, really enjoyed the level of freedom I felt in circling Europe's events. Yeah, would you like to speak more, like in words, of your context around like freedom, in supporting people's freedom in the training?
Yeah, it makes me think of a lot of surrendered leadership seems to facilitate unlearning. So it's less about learning this new tool and more about the limits to your perceiving, like opening. And one way that shows up is that people have a lot of expectations and assumptions of what's going to happen when they come into a workshop, and they're not actually living from their deepest freedom then and there. So from my point of view, there's something to work with then and there, and there's something to explore with that person. And it does wake people up to how free they are. And that's what it, first of all, being birthday circled was this amazing thing, like I described that experience earlier. And then when we came up with the surrendered leadership, it started to dawn on me that, oh, like I can actually kind of experience this anywhere, anytime. And it's all about how I show up and how I'm perceiving reality. And the practice kind of woke me up to this, radical freedom and responsibility and empowerment, essentially. And I think a lot of people aren't walking around in that way, or at least they could be, but we all have our blind spots, and the practice will show up pretty quickly where you're not free and where you're not empowered. So that's really cool. Like the mirror is potent and strong in the practice, and it's confronting to see yourself sometimes in the mirror, but it's also the most liberating thing I think you can do. So in terms of shadow work or development, it's very rich. And my vision is always that it's not about what happens in the workshop per se. It's then about having this deeper sense of freedom and empowerment that you can take out into your life and live. And we are working at an ontological level or a being level, that where we make a little tweak in the depth of our personality or our being or our way of perceiving life, if something shifts there, which it often does in a weekend, when you leave the workshop, you will then start to reorient. Your whole life will reorient to that shift at the base level. So it's very deep work, and it's some of the deepest work I know, and it does change people, and that process of reorienting to the realizations that you've had, we want to support over this 6 months, and in multiple ways, like every possible way we could support you, from a cognitive point of view, from an emotional, from a somatic, everything we want to support. And yeah, it's a potent 6 months for people. Yeah.
Yeah, thank you for your insights. It's really nice to sit here with you and explore the possibility of the experience together. Is there anything else, last thing you want to share to the people in Bali before you're coming?
I'd love to have a big group of you. The more people we have, the more of our team we can fly over there, and Sean's going to be coming for sure, and we've got Ellen and Marisha on standby if the numbers are high. Just excited to come, and if you're interested at all, please reach out to me or you, and very happily have a conversation with you.
Thank you. Look forward to October.
Me too. Thanks for interviewing me. Should I stop?